This is the roll call of members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. The following member is excused. Representative Pack. Voted. Roll call shows 96 members present. The chair declares a quorum for the conducting of business. State your point.
Would it be in order to present a motion to waive any and all rules necessary to bring a House concurrent resolution to the floor of the House?
There is no resolution to bring to the floor of the House. Resolutions have gone to the House Rules Committee.
It's not showing on the website.
It has been sent to the House Rules Committee. House motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when we adjourn until September 23rd, 2021 at 9 a.m. Representative Lehman.
Further reading of the motion, the second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is adopted. We will move to the second reading calendar. Representative Steuerwald, House Bill 1581. Chair hands down second reading House Bill 1581.
House Bill 1581, a bill for enactment concerning general provisions.
Bill is ready for amendment. Recommender Grossman, Representative Steuerwald.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 1581 be amended to read as follows. Page 1, between the enacting clause and line 1, begin a new paragraph.
For the motion, the second. Chair recognizes Representative Steuerwald to speak on the amendment.
Speaker and members of the House and Mr. Leader, we've shared this amendment with the Democrat leadership. It's very simple. It's actually the Senate maps and a small technical correction or clarification on when local units of governments look at and take the census data for their purposes. It's really kind of that simple. Part of the reason we're doing this is because it'll go through the process over in the Senate. They'll have their hearings. They'll have the committee hearings. Everything will remain the same. It'll be public, and they'll have their hearings. But if we do this, put the amendment in here, then we don't have to come back for a concurrence, assuming there's no amendments. So that's the purpose and process of what we're trying to do. So appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Representative Steuerwald. Is there further discussion? Representative Pierce, speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, relation with the House. I rise in opposition to the amendment. This amendment of the Senate maps created by the Senate Republicans is the world champion of gerrymanders. I've been beating your side of the aisle up for your map, which has an efficiency rating of 6.9%, which means that a lot of voters are having their votes diluted, that basically the way the districts are drawn, it's difficult for voters to have their votes fully impact the process. And if you run that same analysis on this Senate map, which has been handed off to us from our friends across the hall, the efficiency gap is 12.2%. I mean, that's huge. What that basically means is like a lot of voters are having their votes marginalized by these maps. And I don't think that we should necessarily fall into the habit of you draw yours, I'll draw mine, which seems to be what's happening here. You know, you just have to wonder, for our friends in the Senate, how much is enough? You get the sense that they have this feeling that there's a birthright that the minority party in the Senate should never have more than single digits for seats. My God, they're like 11 now, I think. It's unbelievable. So I think that a more appropriate way to go here would be to not put the amendment in, have the Senate hear from the public about their proposal, then they can decide whether they still want to follow through with putting it into the bill. It will give us an opportunity to hear what the public thinks, because that's kind of the problem with the way this process is working out, is the House, we as legislators, as representatives of the people over here, have not had any feedback or input at all from the public about this Senate map. So if we at least wait, have the Senate put in over there, I guess they're going to have a hearing, so we might get a little bit of sense of what the public thinks about them. And then when it comes back, we can decide whether it's worthy of concurring based on what we've heard from the public, or whether we think we have to do something different to get to a map that really serves it. But I mean, this efficiency gap at 12.2%, that just shows you how unbelievably gerrymandered that Senate map is, and I would urge you to reject it.
Further discussion on the amendment? Representative Pryor, speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in opposition of the amendment. I think it's really unfortunate that we just got the amendment yesterday. It was released. We haven't had an opportunity to fully analyze the amendment for the Senate. And the Senate Democrats, they've done some analysis, but to fully understand the impact of what that amendment is in almost less than 24 hours. I think the integrity of the process really needs to be focused on. People have asked for transparency. In all of the hearings that we had 9 hearings in the committees. And people wanted transparency. They wanted 30 days to fully understand what the maps are. And we're less than 48 hours talking about the Senate maps. We did not have an opportunity to see the maps in committee, to debate the maps in committee, and now we're being asked to vote for these Senate maps. I think it's really unfortunate. I will be voting against this, if nothing else, because we really haven't had enough time to understand the impact of what this amendment is and compare it to the current maps. And then also our colleagues over in the Senate haven't had that opportunity either. And I just think that we need to make sure that we're giving the people what they asked for. They asked for more transparency, and putting this amendment in right now does not give that transparency that the public has been asking for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Pryor. Further discussion, Representative Leader GiaQuinta to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. Just a quick comment, and I too haven't had a chance to do a real deep dive into the Senate maps, but I did get some calls from back home. So Representative Pierce, what may lead to that 12.2% dilution of the vote as you were talking about. If you look at the city of Fort Wayne, they basically have kind of chopped up the city and took a east, west, north, and south, and basically the urban area, the urban core of the city of Fort Wayne will have their vote be diluted, if you will, and will not, again, have that centralized representation that I think that they do deserve. So I wanted to just bring that up because I did get some calls from back home on the Senate map. So with that, I respectfully ask for a roll call vote, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call has been requested and second. Will be granted. Is there further discussion? Chair sees none. The question is on the adoption amendment. When the machine is open, all those in favor will indicate by voting aye. All those opposed will vote no. Let's see. Have all the members voted, tally the roll. Roll call shows 68 ayes, 28 noes. The amendment has been adopted. Are there further amendments? Representative Pierce.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 1581 be amended to read as follows. Page 5, delete lines 23.
Heard the amendment in a second. The chair recognizes Representative Pierce to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment would replace the Republican proposed House map, State House map, with a map drawn by a citizen and was a finalist in the Citizen Commission competition. And really the two most important things about this map, I believe, and which fits the kind of philosophy that our caucus has been pursuing through this process and really been fighting for a decade now, is that, first of all, this would replace in the bill a map that was not drawn by a legislator. And that's important because we all have inherent conflicts of interest. We're all immediately interested in what will the map do to our district? What will it do to our caucus's overall size? We have all these political and personal interests about these maps. And so no matter how objective we might try to be in drawing these maps, there's always going to be some bias in there. So this map was actually drawn by a citizen, reviewed by the Citizen Commission, and it was a finalist. The other thing that it does that's really important is it reflects the partisan balance of the state. And one of the problems is, we talk about this efficiency factor and people's votes getting marginalized or diluted. And so the efficiency factor of the House Republican proposal is 6.9%. For the citizen map, it's 2.3%. So it does a much better job of reflecting the current partisan balance of the state. And so the Republican map is expected to yield about 69 Republican seats. The citizen map would yield about 59 Republican seats. Let me repeat that. Our side of the aisle is proposing a map that will give you 59 seats. Now that's actually probably about 3 more than you should have because the baseline is about 56%, the political scientists tell us. But we're trying to break out of the pattern that we've been in for the last half century, where the majority imposes its will to create maps that gives it a partisan advantage, and then the minority comes up here and presents its gerrymander bill that would give it a partisan advantage and argues that its map is more fair. We want to break out of that. And so this map is not perfect, but it is much closer to what I think the people told us they want us to do in all those hearings we had. And that is to be able to have a map that actually reflects the preferences of the people, the will of the people, so that when the 100 people gather here to do the people's business, we're accurately reflecting the priorities and the desires of the people we represent. That is a key thing. So you can really get down in the weeds on these maps. You can get into all kinds of minutia. But just the important thing to know is this is your opportunity to vote for a map that was not drawn by a legislator, that was drawn by a disinterested citizen, and actually reflects the political balance of our state. And so I would urge you to support the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Representative Steuerwald, speak on the amendment. The author yield, he yields.
Thank you, Representative Pierce. I just want, I need just a clarification, make sure I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I mean, you didn't draw this map.
No, the map was drawn by a person named Andrew Stant that was submitted to the Citizens Commission. That map was a finalist. Now, I should mention, for full disclosure, the map that was submitted did have a contiguity problem because it appears that the map drawer, the citizen, didn't realize that after you choose all the precincts, you have to go back and kind of do a little bit of filling in, you know, to make the boundaries even, so they're contiguous. So staff did go in, they changed about, I don't know, 60 to 100 census blocks. It doesn't impact the political makeup of the map or anything at all. It's just, you know, taking those precincts and making them flat. Because if you run it into the analysis, the first thing it says, like, this map is not contiguous. So we made that technical change. So I should have mentioned that up front.
No, I appreciate that. And you mentioned a couple of times this is a non-interested citizen, but I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up. But he was a candidate, right?
No, you're thinking of, so there were a number of maps that were finalists in the Citizen Commission. We did not select the first map because, quite honestly, we didn't think it met all the requirements that we were trying to do. So this is a map that was in that group of finalists from the Citizens Commission, but it was not the one you're thinking of.
Okay, thanks. And you were not on the Citizens Commission, or were you?
I was not. As a matter of fact, I deliberately made sure to never talk to anyone on the Citizen Commission because I didn't want anyone to suggest I was trying to influence their work.
That's good thinking. That's good thinking. Is this the one, though? This is the same map that Common Cause talked about? Is that the one they discussed, or this is, except for the changes you made, this is essentially the same thing?
This is a different one. So they had, I think they named 3 finalists. This is I think the third place winner.
Okay, so
if you want to call it that.
That helps with my confusion. I've never
Okay.
seen this map before then.
Right. Well, it's been out there amongst the proposals from the various members of the public.
But as a proposal never decided on, and then, but you or your caucus selected to make this your amendment.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
So we wanted to look at a map drawn by someone outside the building that had gone through the Citizen Commission that reflected our overall goals, which is reflecting the partisan balance of the state and being drawn by someone who doesn't have the inherent conflicts of legislators.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But this isn't the one that was even talked about by Common Cause in the committee.
It wasn't the one they announced as like the grand winner, that's true.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure because we talked about process and transparency, and we've not seen this
Right.
till about 3 hours ago, as far as your amendment. So really threw me off. Then do you know the population deviation with this map?
Yeah, the population deviation is 3.9%, so I'll admit that's not quite as good as your less than 1%, but well within the legal parameters of the constitutional requirements.
Yeah. Well, statewide there's some leeway. Congressional there's very,
Right, congressional,
very
you're supposed
But-
to try to get to 0 deviation, right.
Right. So, but at 3.9 deviation, if we're right at 700, then this is a deviation of almost right at 2,400 people per district.
Well, I haven't done the math, Rosemary Steuerwald. The reason why I went to law school is because I'm really bad at math. But the point is the courts have approved maps up to 9.9% deviation. The case law, I think, essentially says that while it's not a safe harbor to be below 10%, there's a rebuttable presumption that it's constitutional if you're there. And so we've got plenty of precedent on that. So like everything, as you know probably better than anyone, there are trade-offs in all these maps. And you have to kind of decide which goals or which policies you're prioritizing to be at the top of the list. And as long as you meet the constitutional legal requirements, then you've got leeway to work within those to pursue your policies.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Permission to
Permission
speak?
granted.
I'll be very brief. Obviously, I was confused. I thought this was the map that was discussed in committee, and it wasn't. So I just was aware that this was the map we're actually talking about 2 minutes ago. When we talk about the deviation, it's extremely important. There is, Representative Pierce is right. Statewide, you have more leeway than you do with congressional maps, and he's correct on that. But when you talk about deviation, you're talking about diluting or enhancing somebody's vote. The wider the deviation, the more you enhance somebody's vote in a district with a lesser population. And the more you dilute somebody in a deviation with a greater population than the ideal district. That's why, heaven knows, we work so hard to get the deviation under 1%, because that is extremely important, that one vote equals another one. We have worked extremely hard on all aspects of our maps, from population to compactness to contiguous, and all the state and federal requirements in the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. I urge you to reject this. Our maps are rock solid, and I would appreciate you defeating this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Steuerwald. Further discussion, Representative Pfaff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I'm so excited. What I've learned about redistricting is it's really all about math. Right now, 71 seats are held by the majority. The Republican proposed maps gets it a little closer to 69, but based on recent electoral results, Republicans typically receive 58% of the vote statewide, so they should represent 58 seats. It's just math. I've had the opportunity to attend 5 public hearings all around this state to learn more about what Hoosiers care about when it comes to these new district maps. What I learned in these meetings is that Hoosiers want a voice. That's really important. They want competitive districts. They want a choice when they show up to vote. This map, drawn by an independent commission, helps us get there. What we do with the maps now will determine how much faith Hoosiers have in their government. The gravity of the decisions we make now will reverberate for the next 10 years, and we must get this right. I urge you to support this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Pfaff. Is there further discussion? Representative Errington to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I, too, am a member of the House Elections Appropriations Committee and went to all those, well, I went to 5 of the hearings since some of them were held at the same time. And what I heard over and over again was they wanted the maps to be drawn independently of legislators, so that it would be the voters, not the legislators, determining what those districts look like. They also wanted it to represent Indiana's political balance. And they wanted it to be statistically verified, balanced map. And finally, that it fosters competition in the districts and accountability. The amendment that Representative Pierce has proposed meets those expectations of the public and the testimony that we heard. Now, we did have a hearing last week. It was barely 24 hours after the Republican map was made public. And basically what I heard was that map did not meet the test of what the public wants. So, and I think part of it is because what those maps lead to once they're in effect and the General Assembly is made up of the people who are chosen in those maps. And that is that if they're unfair, they lead to less representation and less representative government. They lead to more abuses in government, and they lead to more extreme government, and they're less representative government. So for those reasons, I urge you to support this amendment. Thank you.
There further discussion on the amendment? Representative Pryor, speak on the amendment.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in support of Representative Pierce's amendment. The one thing that is really important about the amendment that Representative Pierce has presented is that it is a map that offers more competition. We oftentimes say that competition is good in the business community. Competition is also good when we're talking about trying to get out the best public policy that we can for all Hoosiers. Compactness is also important. Contiguous, obviously, that has to be a part of the maps as well. But the competitive piece is the piece that I think is missing from the Republican maps. And so we're offering up a map that meets that parameter. The one thing that we've always talked about is that we want to make sure that the voters pick their elected officials and not the elected officials picking their voters. That is why we have made sure that we have not had our hands in drawing of the maps and allowing someone from the public to draw the maps, because we want to make sure that they feel that they are a part of the process. And that is why I think this is a good map for us to adopt, and I hope that you all will support it as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Pryor. Further discussion, Representative Leader GiaQuinta to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. Back in, I think the first time I addressed this body as a leader in 2019, I believe, one thing I indicated to you all that we were in support of an independent commission, whether we were going to be in the majority or the minority the next time the maps rolled around. And I said, if I'm going to say it at the mic, we're going to have to walk the walk, and that's why we're here today to present an independently drawn map. Now, as you recall, back the past session, we came up with an amendment and a bill to model after the way the state of Iowa does things. So it's called the Iowa Plan. So if we had to do it all over, we would have liked to have had support and gotten that thing through where the legislature draws them, in this case, Legislative Services draws the maps, and then it's approved by the legislature. That didn't happen, so this was our last alternative, was to present a map drawn by a citizen in the state of Indiana. And just to repeat a couple more things that have been said, this map is statistically verified balanced. It was not drawn by the legislature. Repeat, not drawn by the legislature, independently drawn. It reflects Indiana's, for the most part, politically balanced. And again, fosters competitive districts and accountability. And as we've said so often, what does that mean? I believe it fosters a better working relationship across the aisle, brings up better legislation, and so forth. So I would encourage you to support the amendment, and I ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Chair sees none. Roll call has been requested. Did you want to close, Representative Pierce? I'm going to allow you to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I just want to close by urging you to take a different path. Let's try to think beyond our own self-interest. Let's try to think about the greater good of democracy. These maps meet all the legal requirements we're proposing as the alternative. And while I understand concerns about population deviations, I think we should have an equal concern about diluting votes through gerrymandering. If we can go a different path over the next decade, we can have competition. I know that's something that's very close to the Republican side of the aisle. We hear a lot about competition, economic competition, winning based on your skill and ability, not because the playing field is tilted. We want to compete. You know what? If we compete, we try our hardest and we still lose because the voters want something different, we will accept that. But it's getting harder every election cycle to accept constantly losing, not just because maybe we didn't have the best candidate, maybe because we didn't articulate the best ideas that election cycle, but simply because we start in the hole before we even get going. All we're asking for is a fair shot at competition. We don't want to be handed anything. This map gives you 59 seats most likely to start with. We just want to get into the ball game. Please stop marginalizing us and the people who we represent and the other people out there who cannot get the representation that they would like to have.
Roll call has been requested and will be granted. When the machine is open, all those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. If all the members voted, roll call shows 27 ayes, 68 noes. The amendment has been defeated. Are there further amendments? Representative Jacob.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 1581 be amended to read as follows, page 56, between lines.
Heard the amendment in a second. Representative Jacob is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, my amendment number 5 is a very simple amendment calling for a ban on mandatory COVID vaccinations and any proof of vaccine.
State your point, Representative Leonard.
The amendment appears to be in violation of Rule 80 to the bill.
Repeat the point one more time.
The amendment appears to be in violation of Rule number 80, germaneness to the bill itself.
Chairman Leonard states that the amendment appears in violation of Rule number 80, the germaneness. The House will stand in recess as we consider the point of order. After consultation with the chairman of the Rules Committee, the chair rules the point is well taken. Are there further amendments? Chair sees none. The bill is ordered to engrossment. Representative Chairman Leonard for a committee announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. The Rules Committee will meet upon adjournment in Ways and Means up in 404 for a short meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Leonard. Chair recognizes Representative Porter for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move we do not adjourn.
Heard the motion. The second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion passes. We are adjourned.